and welcome to GameSack. It's time once again to take a look at some arcade games that were never ported home or included in any compilations. It's been a while since we've done one of these, and there are a lot of great games in this episode. But even the ones that aren't so great are still interesting, at least they are to me. Anyway, let's get into it. This is AB Cop, or Air Bike Cop from Sega, released in 1990. Well, it was published by Sega, but it was actually developed by ICOM, best known for developing Pulstar on the Neo Geo and also Mayfat Conspiracy on the NES. Is that how you say it, Mayfat? Knowing my luck, it probably isn't. In this game, you play a righteous policeman on an air bike, dispensing justice as you see fit on the streets which are full of crime. It plays similar to Chase HQ in that you need to hunt down the bad guys, and your main method of attack is ramming into said bad guys. During the normal part of the stage, you have a set number of lowly enemy air bikers that you need to kill. These are all marked with an arrow. Simply ram into them and they'll blow up. But each subsequent stage needs you to ram into these guys more and more times before they die. There will be an occasional enemy which seems to take fewer hits though. To catch the enemies, you have a turbo button, which works most of the time, but if you overuse it, you need to wait a small amount of time before it works again. You also have a jump button, which enables you to clear obstacles and also makes your attack better if you can land on an enemy while using your turbo, but only for that one hit. You can only jump a set number of times, but you can pick up more jumps with the blue J icons. After those guys are all dead, you fight the boss, and he shoots stuff at you. You can jump over it, but I suggest that you keep him as close to you as possible. He has a life bar, so you can see how effective you are trying to kill him. Actually, the bosses don't die. They get to go to jail, unlike all of their minions that you just killed. Speaking of dying, you're invincible in this game. That's right, no matter what happens to you, it only slows you down and it doesn't cause any damage. So, what is the challenge? The clock. It is not generous at all. If it runs out, crime wins and justice fails. You only have one life, so if the timer runs out, you need to continue. And if you do, I like how Air Bike Cop thanks to Coin for saving his life. The good news is that the stage has its own time limit, but if you make it to the boss, he has his own time limit as well, so you can just keep continuing from him. Well, except for the final stage, which is mostly a boss rush with only one timer, so good luck. This game is actually pretty fun, and it made me want to keep trying as it is quite challenging. The graphics are pretty good for a 1990 game, though certainly nothing that we hadn't seen before at the time. There's plenty of fast scaling provided by the Sega X board, which is the same hardware used for Afterburner and Thunderblade. Unfortunately, this game never exceeds 30 frames per second, which honestly is kind of surprising. The sound and music are pretty good, and basically it sounds like a Genesis. Certainly nothing wrong with that. I can kind of understand why this game was never ported, as it's quite basic, and by the time we had hardware powerful enough to do it justice, it just didn't have enough content. Still, I would have loved to see it on the Saturn bundled with the other Sega games that I'll be talking about in this episode on the single CD. I mean, wouldn't you? Here's Desert Assault by Data East, which was released in 1991. You know, I could have sworn we covered this game in a previous episode, but nope. We were also going to do this for playing with Sax using a friend's arcade PCB, but we didn't do that either. Not sure why, as this is a really cool overhead running gun. It reminds me a lot of Capcom's Mercs. You can choose from 4 different outstanding human beings in the beginning. Each of them starts out with a unique weapon, but any character can get any weapon. Each character also has a unique bomb-style attack as well. Sadly, they all share the same exact voice. You have a life bar, which is a good thing because it's really easy to get hit. One of the things that makes it easy to take damage is how slow a lot of the enemy bullets move. You think they'd be easy to dodge, but they hang around on the screen for way too long, and not all of the bullets move at the same speed. You can refill your life bar a bit by grabbing food, coke, milk, or things like that. You can even run around by double tapping in the direction you want to run. The weapons are all fun to use, even the shotgun. I normally hate shotguns in games because of their limited range. You can even get in a few different types of vehicles to wreak havoc in, and some of them are huge. That's what she said. There are only 5 stages here, but they are all pretty big and they seem to get longer and longer the further you get. The good news is that you won't get bored playing them. Sometimes there are searchlights that you need to avoid. Getting caught basically just freezes you for a second. Fortunately, it's not a stealth mission like Metal Gear or something. I mean, everyone's already shooting at you anyway, so come on, they know you're here. The graphics are really good with lots of variety and some cool stage designs. Data East also really liked using their single-layer transparency effect in this one. It's especially effective when you go into rooms, which allows you to see through the walls. The music is awesome, and that's pretty much the case in most Data East arcade games. You've got some cool synthesizers as well as some real electric guitar. That's right, it's real! Oh my god, is this game from the future? So, how does it compare to Mercs? It's pretty close. Mercs feels a little bit better when it comes to the control, and as a game, this falls behind, but not by much. I'd also say that Shock Troopers on the Neo Geo is a better game. Still, you can't go wrong here, as it's very enjoyable. This would have been a great game to see on the Genesis or the Super Nintendo, though it surely would have had to been downgraded. Or maybe even the Neo Geo, since Data East made games on that. Can you imagine the Neo Geo getting a port of a non-Neo Geo arcade game? What a trip that would be. The transparencies would have to go away though. The Saturn or the PlayStation could both do this game perfectly, but by then I guess customers weren't really interested in 2D games, at least according to company executives. Check this one out if you can. This next game has been requested a lot, but I've always had issues capturing the gameplay. Well, thanks to my really big brain, it's no longer an issue. It's a pretty fun game, so check it out. A lot of people request that I talk about Carnival, which is a light gun game from Midway that came out in 1998, and they request it often. Well, here it is. I'm finally getting around to it. You guys hyped this one into the stratosphere, so I expect nothing but the best. Nah, I'm just kidding. Anyway, you're in a group tour checking out some spooky stuff from the token taker's estate, I guess, and he's dead? Since you're an idiot, you take his token and plop it into the jester's mouth. Now the carnival is awakened again and is trying to kill you. Geez, that's the thanks I get for waking you up? You have weapons somehow, and you need to kill almost everything you see. It plays pretty much like any other light gun game, except that this one is FMV based, kind of like Area 51. However, here it's all rendered graphics with real polygons on top of them. You have a standard ration of 6 bullets, and at any time you can reload to replenish your capacity. If you're like me though, you'll often find yourself shooting at the screen with an empty clip for a second or two before you realize that you need to reload. Keep in mind that my IQ is barely even in the 50s though. Of course, there are various gun power-ups if you're quick enough to grab them, but honestly, they don't last very long at all. My favorite is the extra capacity clip with your basic weapon, which will last until you die. There are 4 stages, and you can choose the order in which you play the first 3, and only after defeating those first 3 can you see the final level. Each level is pretty big. My favorite one, of course, is the Haunted House. It reminds me a lot of House of the Dead, only a bit watered down and crappier looking if I'm being honest. Still, there's a lot to appreciate in this level. My next favorite is the Christmas theme level. I love all the different music in this one. Then there's the circus level, and if you're afraid of clowns, then it might be scary for you, I guess. Personally, I just kind of think that clowns and circus things are kind of dumb, so I didn't get much out of this level. The graphics are decent, I suppose. The FMV backgrounds are kind of grainy. The polygons aren't much better than Nintendo 64 quality, and their textures are so-so. And since this game is FMV based, the frame rate is pretty low, running at around 18 frames per second most of the time. When the camera moves fast, it can be pretty ugly, and you feel like you don't have very precise aim as a result. Compare this with House of the Dead 2, which came out at around the same time, and it looks even worse. House of the Dead 2 has a completely polygon world, twice the resolution, and runs at 60 frames per second. Overall, this is still a fun game. I'm surprised that Midway didn't release it on the Dreamcast or the PlayStation 2. A game I've always wanted to play is Arabian Fight from Sega, which was released in 1991. This is a beat 'em up, and right away you can see why people might want to play it. The visuals are incredible for its time. Everything moves in and out of the screen, and it all scales smoothly. All the characters and all of the backgrounds look great. And there are even some really cool animated scenes which look like they hired an actual animation studio to do them. As far as the story goes, it turns out that the princess has been kidnapped and now you need to rescue her. Talk about motivation, that's all the story any video game ever needs, even racing games. Up to 4 players can play, and that means there are 4 characters to choose from. Sadly, this one doesn't play as good as it looks. For one, the characters are all pretty big and it can feel a bit claustrophobic even with just a single player. I can't imagine 4 players with a ton of enemies on screen at once. It'd be mass confusion. As a result of the tight space, you'll sometimes get knocked completely off of the screen, which is quite frustrating. Anyway, you have a punch and a jump as well as a special attack, which of course removes some of your life bar. Pretty basic stuff here. But sometimes you'll find a genie lamp. If you grab it, you'll get the option to do your special attack. To do this, you have to press the attack and jump buttons at the same time. It doesn't always work the first time you try it, but when it does, it usually kills every on-screen enemy. Unfortunately, the screen flashes a lot when this happens, and it's super annoying. And what kind of special attack you do seems completely random, but it actually depends on what area you're in. The game is slow, but at least each area is pretty short. Even with this though, the game does start to get boring, which is something that plagues a great majority of beat-em-ups. Towards the last part of the game, I just decided to stop playing as it was so repetitive I didn't feel like seeing the whole thing through to the end was a good way to spend my time. I think if I were playing with a friend or 3, I'd probably put forth the effort to see it all the way through though. It really takes a special kind of game design skill to keep beat-em-ups interesting the entire way through, and that skill wasn't at work here, sadly. Like I said, the visuals are fantastic and obviously the best part of the entire experience. It's not all peachy keen though. The enemy characters move around the screen in a very jerky and kind of unsettling manner. The music is fine with lots of Middle Eastern flavored stuff. The sounds are mostly okay, though I find the noise that most of the skeletons make kind of odd. As of the making of this episode, the video emulation for this game isn't perfect yet. I'm assuming that the sky back there is probably supposed to be blue. I can see why this one didn't get a home port, as honestly, aside from the graphics, there's really nothing special about it. The Saturn got Guardian Heroes, which is similar in a lot of ways, but is so much better all around. Still, I wouldn't complain if this were on a compilation with lots of other arcade games. This next game has also been requested a great many times for some coverage, but I kept confusing the title with Night Slashers for whatever reason. It's not Night Slashers, but you know what it is? I think it might be my favorite arcade beat-em-up of, well, ever. Violent Storm from Konami is another beat-em-up, this one released in 1993. Now this is how you do a beat-em-up right. You're not gonna believe this, but your girlfriend was kidnapped for absolutely no reason. It really doesn't matter. All you need to know is that hundreds and hundreds of enemies are gonna die as a result. You can choose from 3 different characters, Wade, Boris, or Kyle. I really like the energy in this game. Everything moves around quite fast as you fight. The control is excellent and never feels sluggish in the least. Not only that, but most of the enemies die quickly and you're not left hanging out in the same place forever before moving on. This is a great way to make the game feel far less repetitious. There's only a few enemies who take a lot of damage, and you can usually defeat them in maybe 45 seconds or so. As expected, the bosses are a lot tougher. What's interesting about these guys is that they have 2 life bars, a big one at the bottom of the screen and a smaller one near the top where all of the other enemy life bars show up. Seems kind of redundant to me, I don't know why they did that. But I'd just say that I'd rather have too many boss life bars than no boss life bars. Again, this is a standard beat 'em up with an attack button and a jump button. Press them both at the same time and you'll do your special, which, once again, takes off a chunk of your life bar. You'll find yourself needing to do this a lot as you constantly get surrounded, at least in single player mode. Of course, it's no big deal since you have unlimited continues, which is actually kind of interesting for a Konami arcade game. Usually they limit the number of continues you can use. The graphics are bright and colorful for the most part, certainly nothing to complain about here. Everything looks a tad cartoony, and that fits the game's high energy level. Then there's the music, which is responsible for 80% of that energy. It's crazy, with 3 of the stages having super cheesy songs as you fight. There's also some rockabilly stuff, and this game kind of reminds me of playing Ane-san on the PC Engine as a result. As goofy as the music is, it really does make the game even more enjoyable. It makes me feel as if Konami had a good time making this one. I certainly hope that was the case. This is another game where the emulation isn't quite perfect yet. I'm not sure what's off about it though, as I've never played the game in an actual arcade. Overall, this is a fantastic game and I had fun from beginning to end, and I can't wait to play it again. I'm pretty upset that this one never came home. This one would have been perfect on the Saturn or the PlayStation. Maybe Konami figured that this game was too old to port by the time those systems came out. It's really too bad. Be absolutely sure to play this one. Okay, for this last segment, I want to mention a few Sega arcade games that never came home, starting with Arail. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm sure you'll let me know. This was released in 1990 and developed by Westone. West 1? This is an overhead tank game that feels a tad primitive for an arcade game released in 1990. Basically, you pilot a tank and can shoot in 8 directions. If you hold the fire button, you can't move, but you can keep moving if you tap the fire button. Over on the left is a power meter. When this is blue, you can press a button to wrap a shield around you. In order to fill this meter up, you need to collect P icons. Even if you already have a shield active, you can activate another one if you have enough power, and once the first shield takes a hit, the second one is automatically there for you. You can also get a little option thingy which orbits your tank, but it doesn't feel very helpful most of the time. It is still kind of helpful though. Eventually, you'll work your way inside and the view changes to a first-person mode. Here, you just need to shoot down enemies and collect P icons. Make it through that, and now you're at the last part of the stage, working your way to the boss at the top. This game is tough, like crazy tough. It would take a lot of dedication to get far in this one. You often stand no chance at all with enemy fire coming at you from multiple directions, all while you're trying to shoot those same enemies down. You're constantly looking for more P icons just so you can have enough shield to survive. Weirdly, the first-person tunnel segments are extremely easy. The graphics are fairly good, but you probably won't see much of them. Same can be said with the music. I think the reason that this one never came home is because it wasn't very popular, likely because nobody wanted to spend 20 minutes and a ton of quarters just to get past the first 3 areas and defeat the first boss.
Type is ready.
Next up is F1 Exhaust Note, which was released in 1991. As you can see, this is a dual-screen F1 racing game. Honestly, aside from the head-to-head dual cabinet, I'm not sure why this one was even made. It's nowhere near as good as either the arcade or the home version of Super Monaco GP, which showed up in the arcades 2 years prior. The track is far less interesting, though if we're comparing the arcade versions, this one is just as difficult. I've tried this one many times, but I rarely even make it to the final lap of the first 4-lap race. I imagine it's a little easier if you're playing on the actual arcade machine. The graphics are average for the time, and so is the audio, but hey, at least the scaling is nice. Otherwise, it's just another generic F1 racing game. The next year, Sega came out with an update called F1 Super Lab. This one adds an official F1 license, woohoo! It also allows you to choose from 3 different drivers/teams. Right away you'll notice the track is more interesting and visually impressive, though I still like the track in Super Monaco GP better. You can now cycle into a cockpit view if you'd prefer it to be a little bit more like Super Monaco GP. This game also adds an overtake button which will give you a boost of speed. Unfortunately, this doesn't really seem to help much at all, at least it doesn't help me. No matter how many times I tried, I couldn't even make it to the 3rd lap regardless if I used the overtake button or not. Again, I imagine this would be easier on the actual arcade cabinet. Overall, this is a better game than Exhaust Note, but it can't touch the gameplay of the Genesis version of Super Monaco GP. I can understand why they didn't bother to port these rather too basic racing games home. Finally, before AM2 made Virtua Fighter, they made Burning Rival here, which came out in 1992. This is a one-on-one fighting game that's clearly inspired by Street Fighter II. You have the same range of weak and strong punch and kick attacks. Of course, each fighter has special moves and attacks for you to discover. The gameplay feels very slow, but of course in 1992, it probably didn't seem that way. As a game, it's decent, but if you're playing it in single-player mode, the computer lays it on pretty thick very early on in the game, not giving you much of a chance to learn your character. For example, good luck even hurting Arnold at all when you get to him, even if he's only your second fight. He's nearly untouchable. With some rebalancing, this could have been pretty awesome. I do love how this game looks though. For its time, it had better animation than any one-on-one fighting game in the arcades. And the characters all look great, as do the various backgrounds. Unfortunately, the characters themselves aren't tremendously exciting. The sound isn't so hot. There's a loud bell like a boxing match that you'll hear constantly, which doesn't take long to become annoying.
You win!
I can only imagine arcade employees hearing this every few seconds for the entire day. Oh man, that would get old. Also, the stereo separation is weird, with some of the sound samples being hard panned to the left or to the right. This is yet another one of those games where the emulation isn't perfect yet, and I'm wondering if this is a result of that. Still, this is an interesting game that clearly failed to gain any momentum in the arcade, so it's no surprise it never received a home port. And yes, AM2 made this, though Yu Suzuki doesn't seem to have been directly involved. They probably did it on his day off.
Round 2. Dog fight!
And there you go, more games you can't play outside of an arcade without emulation or actually obtaining the arcade hardware. And despite there being 6 of these episodes, there's plenty more where that came from. So what would you like to see? Or maybe you know of a game that I don't even know exists. Let me know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
Playing a game in single-player mode is for losers!
Damn straight it is!
So get the X-Band to play with your friends even when your mom says they can't come over! Only the X-Band uses the unlimited power of Alexander Graham Bell's telephone concoction to let you blast aliens together!
This is awesome! I'm playing with my friend from across town!
Play for as long as you want for only $12 per level! Come on, pay! You don't want to be a loser!
Thank you.
Let X-Band take you and your wallet into the future!
Get the power of X!
This episode is sponsored by Raycon. Do you feel like an absolute idiot wearing wired headphones when you listen to your favorite music? Well, step up to the next wave with Raycon wireless earbuds. They sync up instantaneously with your super modern wireless cellular telephone so you can jam to the freshest beats from your antiquated video game systems like I do. The everyday E25 model is Raycon's best yet, with up to 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a more compact design that gives you a nice noise isolating fit. Yeah! It also comes in fun colors. And of course, it comes with different adapters for your super weird ears. And I know your ears are weird. Not only do they sound just as awesome as the other brands that you know, but they start out at around half the price. Go to buyraycon.com/GameSack for 15% off of your order. Brought to you by Raycon.